Welcome into this week's edition of Inside Eagle Nation. A special guest this week, again with Danny out because of the Eagle Club tours over in Dublin this week, but Georgia Southern, a special friend of Georgia Southern, especially Georgia Southern baseball. Ryan Chambers, the former voice of Georgia Southern baseball, so sidelines for Georgia Southern football. Sold, did pretty much everything here at Georgia Southern at one point in time. Appreciate you joining us, bud.
Yeah, man. I didn't realize you meant on video. I thought you meant radio, which I thought would really signal well to the last time you and I did an interview, now infamous on Fox Sports 15 years ago. The problem here is you have to be on camera and we can't fake that.
Right.
But yeah, man, I'm excited to answer real questions.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite memories.
You want to tell that story?
Yeah, absolutely.
Go, you tell it.
Because this was when we were just getting into the Blue White Weekly. It was starting, this was probably 2014, 15 maybe.
A little had a bit. Well, no, because we were in Bishop.
We were the only ones in Parish. It was awesome.
Parish, excuse me. We were the only people, which was interesting when they shut the campus down when the dude was on, when the gunman was on the loose. And Draper and I protected that house.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. We're going to get way off. Continue.
We all had our own locker room. It was awesome. But we're doing a segment on Blue White Weekly for, I guess it was the baseball radio crew, you and Draper. And you're like, no. I've done enough of these that I can just interview myself. And the best part is the start of your answers. You were chuckling to yourself for the answers.
Yeah. Jake, I think Jake Hallman, saw another side of me because he reached out to me later and he was like, you're a real sick dude, because I realized he was doing the editing and he was like, I get your answers. He said, but who's asking the questions? I don't hear the raw. I was like, nobody, Jake. Nobody's in the room. It's just me interviewing myself and making myself laugh.
Oh, that was awesome.
Good times.
There was a lot of stories that we probably can't tell on this.
Yeah.
But the fact of when it was Chris Blair as the general manager for Georgia Southern Sports Properties, or what turned into Georgia Southern Sports Properties over a couple of years, Chris Draper, me and you crammed into Parish. Those were some pretty fun days.
So when I left the advancement side of the house, when Tom Kleinline was hired, and it was July, that would have been, God, what was that? 13, 11, somewhere around that.
After my first year.
Somewhere around there when I came over, because at the time I was in advancement. And funny enough, I still, even 10 years into Georgia Southern, was never technically an employee of the athletic department. Even that one year that I didn't get paid to do baseball. And
right.
That's another story. But
is that when you could only do midweek games or couldn't do midweek games?
I couldn't do midweek games. That's when I started in advancement. There was a little bit of a political tug of war over how much money I was raising. Imagine that, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I was taking advantage of being able to be out on the road with athletics and making a lot of relationships even stronger. And a lot of people wanted to support what we were doing over at the College of Health. And Tom was pretty smart when he got there and realized that our sideline guy is out there hustling money for some department he's never heard of. The dominoes kind of lined up. But I don't remember when we went over. I was hired when the Nelligan thing happened. It was in July. That was crazy. I mean, that 45-day run was, we were up there all night. Like, no one knew none of us knew what we were doing. We had these sponsorships. And of course, in the MMR world, they tell you, there's, $400,000 in cash, which means like 150 and a bunch of free pizza coupons. And you're trying to find $1 million in 45 days. And everyone's mad at you. I became town enemy number one in a lot of places, but that's the growing pains. That's big time college athletics, and that's good. And Georgia Southern needed that eventually. And I'm proud of what we did. We started to get a pretty good reputation around the country, Chris and I, and you and Draper and our team, because we were just crushing it there for a couple of years. And that was, you remember those days. There was so much fun because we knew how far past expectations. We were flying past numbers that nobody thought was possible because of really good corporate partners. And I think in a lot of ways, I know the mantra is that you don't let the radio guys sell. And I get it. I totally get it. I'm not like I used to be very upset about that, but I've mellowed and I've gotten older and I've worked, pretty high up in big time college athletics. So I see the potential downfall when you do that. But at least in that moment with Chris and I, we caught lightning in a bottle because we had created so many great relationships. Chris's like intimate knowledge of broadcasting and radio, and then my relentless picking up a phone. I don't really have much other skill set than that, but otherwise it worked. In being in that office for that many hours, 4 people crammed in an office, which is ridiculous in the beginning, but we love each other so much that we didn't even really think about it. I mean, Draper and I couldn't be more different as people, but for some reason, like it's the only 2 people could be shoved in an office like that, and it worked, and it's actually fun, and we made games of it, and we made weird games of it. Yeah, man, those were the days, man. I look back on it all, and Chris and I talk about this all the time. It's like you'll never get something like that again. It'll never be that good. You just can't. You can't replicate it. You can't. You can go other places, but we were so close, got along so well, and offset each other personality wise. That was fun.
Before we get too deep into this, want to dive into what you're doing now. You've gone all across the country, San Francisco, Virginia. Talk about what you're doing now with the Chris Long Foundation.
Yeah, so I'm director of development now with the Chris Long Foundation. If you don't know, Chris played in the league, won 2 Super Bowls, was the NFL Man of the Year, donated his entire salary to education initiatives. Did living under a bridge thing. I got a ton of ESPN, but he founded Water Boys, which is a program that drills international wells, mostly in East Africa, Tanzania, that part of the world. And kind of came from toward the end of his career, he climbed Kilimanjaro and was like at the base of the mountain and just realized like you have like this part, which is awesome. And all these, rich guys and football players are doing this, life-changing hike. And then you walk into the town and these people don't even have water. And as he's, Chris is a real pragmatic guy. I mean, and that's really why I decided to take the job, because his brain and my brain are very similar. Like I can be very pragmatic. If you give me a problem, I'll just go find a solution. I don't even have to talk about it. It's just go fix it. So he became enthralled with this country and realized through talking to people that this one thing could change the entire trajectory of, towns and villages and cities in that part of the world. Just being able to provide them clean, sustainable water can help the economy thrive. The local education gets better because these kids are hydrated. It really adversely affects women and children are like marching 3 miles with these big things on their head. I mean, that means they can't be at home with their family. It means these kids can't be in school. It's just crazy. And so he started Water Boys, reaching out to people to build wells. That was the first challenge was we're going to do 1 well for every NFL team. And then it kind of evolved, and now it's into giving and reaching 1 million people, which we're halfway there at 500,000 through our efforts for providing these things. So he kind of did it on his own forever. And Water Boys was an incredible success. But I think as he's gotten away from playing now, he has a really successful podcast, Greenlight, which is doing really well. He realized that you need to create a system. And I was at UVA in athletics with corporate sponsorships with UVA. So we had some connection. He played at UVA, and people put us together. I was looking to make a change after COVID, and my divorce, kind of changed, my career thinking. And like I tell people, it's the best pay cut I've ever taken. It's life-changing work. I get to not be this terrible, mean guy that beats up people in negotiations, but loves these people at the same time, because I have great relationships with my sponsors. But, the job that we have to do is drive revenue. And now the job I have to do is do something good for the world. And feels good when you go home, when you do some of that work.
Dive into your time here at Georgia Southern. One of your first experiences with Georgia Southern baseball, I think it might have been the first trip you took, was to Hawaii. Yep. And you're not a big plane guy anyway.
Nope.
You rode with Roger to all parts of the country in the equipment truck. But what was your first trip to Hawaii like?
It was awful. So we're on the plane. I give you a couple of stories. So number one, I have a lot of anxiety for this because we're flying to Hawaii. I had just gotten married. That should have caused me more anxiety, but that's another story for another day. I get back from my honeymoon. I get on the plane. I fly over there. the challenge being all this travel, but also this small, tiny detail that I had never really done play-by-play before. Now that was a shock to everybody. So that was an issue that I had to confront. Okay, now we're, it's like when the dog catches the car and it's like,
right.
oh, I got to go off the air now. Here we go. So I had done some play-by-play, but baseball was not one of them. Baseball was my love, but when you're doing some high school games like I had, most of my TV broadcast, football, and you just don't do a lot of high school. So moving to the collegiate level and then taking on that opportunity, we were flying, and the stories have been legendary over the years. So we got some bad turbulence, right? So I don't fly well to begin with. Everyone knows me well, intimately knows my stress level and my anxiety, and I'm usually a pessimist about things. So I had convinced myself I was going to die. And when you see, and I usually look for the stewardess, and the stewardess were gripping and in tears, and people were yelling. And I'll remember two things from that as I'm thinking that this is probably the end. Number one, Pat Osterman at the time, Sports Information. Everybody knows Pat. All the big longtime Eagle fans know Pat Osterman is. He was Sports Information forever. And then when I came on, I brought him on radio because I knew how good he would be. Pat got shook a little bit. Pat's like a 6'5" cornbread fed dude from the Midwest, right? Those guys don't really get shook like
right.
I do. I could tell he was shook. Now, he wasn't panicking like I was, but I could tell he was nervous. That really did a number on me. And then I look over to my left. Now, remember, people are screaming. It's bad. I will never forget the lasting image. And this started a tone and in a friendship that still lasts this day. In a respect, I look over and Rodhinnon is eating a sandwich. As if nothing is happening. I mean, just they give you those box lunch sandwiches. And Rodney is just sitting there eating it, and he as if nothing is. I say, good grief, that dude is hard. Wow. But yeah, we get there. Hawaii was way out. They play at a pro park. I don't know if they still play at the same. I'm assuming they probably still play at the same stadium. And it's a pro park. It used to be maybe a AAA stadium. It looks like Richmond's, the old. They take those cookie cutter, stadiums, and but they were way out in front of, today's, beer sales and alcohol. So they sell beer. We were set up on the concourse. So I start, grabbing a couple beers, a couple laughs, and we were in the intro. And I told Pat, I said, I muted us. I said, look, Pat, we're about to hit 15 seconds. I need you to know I've never done this before. He starts laughing. I was like, no, I'm serious. Here we go. And off we went. And, 9 seasons at baseball, and I loved every minute of it. It was fun.
Somebody that was inevitably going to come up in a conversation with you is Rodhinnon, somebody that I know that you have immense respect for in the program that he's built here for Georgia Southern. What makes him so special and the perfect leader for this Georgia Southern baseball program?
You're always going to be consistent. Point, end of sentence. He will always have them compete. It is unbelievable at a school like Georgia Southern to have that long a stretch of consistency. And I get people want more regional wins and regional appearances, and the number of just, conference title games that we've played in the last, I don't know how many every year. It's been a lot. It's been more. If I remember the streak, it's been more times than not appearing, at least in the last 6-7 years. Just to get that far. Baseball is such a crapshoot. And especially when you're in a one-bid league. What do you want? What do you want to do? You do the best you can, and they've been 30+ wins. I don't know how many years. Every year I was there except for one. I think, and pretty much that's been the standard that Rodney's set. He's in, and he strikes a really good line too. I've always respected that. Baseball is one of these things where you travel all the time, right? And I think he does. Maybe of all the coaches I've ever been around, he's not too hard on kids, but he's also not your best friend. And that's kind of what it has to be. And he does. I've always respected him so much for being a guy that I think, if I played for him, and let me say this too, I would say things that weren't easy to hear. And I would go talk to him, and I never felt like I couldn't. Like, I can walk in his office and say, I need to talk to you about something. I got something that's bothering me. And he was so supportive of me, especially early. I was not the easiest position taking over for Nate, who'd been around forever, and people loved him for obvious reasons, but we were very different. Nate and I were very different. And Rodney was, at the time when it could have been the other way around, was supportive of what I was trying to do. And I was trying to grow the network. I was trying to add affiliates. I was trying to, put money on the books. I was trying to sell it and broadcast it and do all these other things. But I don't, there's very few, forget coaches, there's very few humans I have more respect for than Rodney and his family. And that place is lucky to have had that kind of run of consistency and success.
You're a big proponent of the people make a place special, and talk about some of the people. I know you had really good relationships with Rusty Cram whenever you were here with women's basketball. Roger Inman, I think everybody has a great relationship with. Talk about some of your favorite people when you were here at Georgia Southern.
If you don't have the right people in place, you're out of luck. I don't care what kind of system you have. I don't care what you have to sell. You have to have the right people in the right seats. And Georgia Southern caught lightning in a bottle in a lot of different ways. Having the right president in the seat, having auxiliary services in the right place, having athletics, the foundation in the right place, having people across campus to help. But you also had this guard that had been there and had institutional knowledge, like a Roger Inman, but also could to pick up and help. I think the world of Roger. In another guy like Roger, when I first got there, Roger, you talk about a guy just walks in your office. Like, Roger had no problem telling me that I stunk on radio. I'm serious. It was like, it's fine. My ego's so massive. It's cool. You can say that. But he became one of my biggest proponents. He used to get so mad when I'd call out Mike Cheek for bad umpiring. And I'm like, Roger, everyone talks about bad I am on radio. How come I can't say he's bad at umpiring? Like, what's the difference? Roger's great. Rusty was great. It was just such a fun time, like we knew we were probably going up. We'd done everything we could in the Southern Conference. That was not an institutional fit anymore. And I used to tell people when I would be able to talk to people up on high because of my position that they would listen. I'd say, look, it's one thing if you want to go to 6 home games at Paulson and you think, here's Furman and Elon and all these good schools. It's not a knock on them. I said, but travel with me for women's basketball. Travel with me for baseball. Watch me have to break in the press box at Davidson because nobody gets there until 15 minutes before the first pitch. And I go in there 30 minutes. And they think that's the strangest thing they've ever heard because they don't even put baseball on radio. And maybe they shouldn't. It's just a different business model when you're playing, private school college athletics. You put all your eggs in one basket and everything else is you try your best, but you don't put a lot of effort because you don't have a lot of the money to do it. It's a sport. So, that time of moving up, having guys like Roger, that knew, what was going on. Mike Tiddick, who is still one of my favorite people. When he shouted me out on his Hall of Fame speech, like I had 7 people that night send me texts, and that was awesome. But man, some great people and good people there too. I'm so impressed with Jared and Chris. I knew when they hired Chris Davis and I told you guys, I was like, let's go. Like, here we go. Like, now this is going to get real because you've got some guys in the seats that know that they've got a little bit of background in this, especially understanding revenue model, because that's it, man. I love game day experience and marketing and social media. All those things are great. You got to raise money, man. That's the only way this works. And you got some cats that know what they're doing on the revenue side. And I have a lot of respect for those guys. I enjoyed meeting them down at Boone. I'm fired up. I'm re-engaged. And I hope the fan base is too.
You talk about making the transition from the SoCon to the Sun Belt, and everybody knows how big of a fan you were of the SoCon at the time, but going around your first trip around the Sun Belt, it was one of my favorite things to see how excited you got when we went to a new Sun Belt Conference stadium.
It was like a child on Christmas. And the thing is, like, a lot of those institutions knew how big a fan I was. I had been beating the drum for the Sun Belt for years. It was the obvious fit. I mean, it's perfect. It was a perfect fit. It's a perfect geographical footprint. That smart people, smart schools, peer institutions and academically good state schools, and that's where Southern needed to be. It was very obvious. And I think you can just get, and this applies for anything, any job. I think you can kind of get stale after a while, and it just got tiresome, going on the road where we would have fun as a team, like going, out after the game or like hanging out with coaches, eating breakfast, like traveling, that stuff's fun. But it just got stale going to places where we weren't really wanted anymore. Like we just weren't. And take that for whatever. I don't care. It's true. Like Furman didn't want us there because we don't fit. It makes sense. Like it doesn't make sense when we go play Wofford in a playoff game and we buy out all their tickets. Like that's not good for anybody. It's not good for us. It's not good for them. Like it's just awkward. It's like, it's not working anymore. So the Sun Belt obviously is probably the biggest winner in realignment. And I'm a fan. I live in Crozet, Virginia. I live 45 minutes from JMU. Marshall's an easy trip. Go out to the beach to ODU. I'm stoked. I'm right down the mountain in between JMU and UVA as the crow flies. So I think it's a great fit. It's going to be a lot of fun too. It's going to be a lot of fun for fans to go to places and get pushback, have fan bases that look like you, that act like you, that care like you. And only growing better with Southern Miss and these others up here that got added.
It's been a fun run for Georgia Southern baseball this year, and there's talks of an at-large bid possibility for Georgia Southern if they're not able to get the Sun Belt Conference crown. The last time that Georgia Southern was in a regional, it was down in Tallahassee, and you and Chris Draper were there. Talk about that environment, that experience. We were just down in Tallahassee for a midweek game against Florida State, but a very different environment, I would imagine.
Yeah, let me get back to that. I think where it's going to be interesting is if, and I've seen the projections with Southern hosting or playing host. The last time it was a significant seed like that was 2009, which was my first regional experience out in Fullerton, which was unfortunate too, because, Southern, I think probably should have been a 3 that year, and they were given a 2, but to take a 2, you got to go across the country. And I just don't think that travel did us very well. Obviously with the bad couple innings there in game 1 and then the Gonzaga game. But the Florida State regional was awesome because, and Draper and I talked about this on the air, Sam's, 10 or 15 pitches in the first inning, and we're looking at each other. It's like, there's no way. These guys don't have a shot. They just don't have a shot. There's no way. I mean, they like to put, or at least at the time, I don't know if this has changed, but under their old, Mike Martin staff, they took pitches, and Sam Howard literally was throwing it like nasty just off the corner. And it was just one of those games where once we score and runs, like, this ball game's over. Like, this is not probably going to be competitive. And, Busby has the big one. It was exciting. I know everyone wanted to see Jameis pitch. He came in late, but that's a cool place to play too. Like, Florida State's a really good college baseball environment. And I love going to places like that. I think the Sun Belt's got an opportunity for some of that too. I've heard great things about Southern Miss. I've never been there. And I know, some of the old school Sun Belt schools like South Alabama and Troy that have built up a program. But regional baseball is fun, man. I still love it. I still listen to, I was listening to Chris on the call Sunday with LSU, Georgia, and I watch you guys or listen to you guys, watch some. And I was at Virginia. I was at the UVA game on Sunday. I've done some radio for them, some fill-in work at times. So, I love college baseball. It's my favorite of all of them, and probably one that I'll always follow.
There's a couple of just random stories that we've got to get you to tell. First one, I think it was the first trip that you and Draper had taken to Texas for baseball.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And you guys got a very nice welcome wagon from Texas folk.
Yeah. So the interstate, and if you go in, so this is San Antonio and this is San Marcos, right? Not San Marcos, San Marcos. And then this is Austin, right? So what is that? 81 or 61? I don't know. There's an interstate that runs that. So interesting in Texas, and this is not the way it is in Georgia. This is also the way it is in California. A lot of these interstates have like an access road that runs parallel. It's like a 4-lane, 6-lane highway that you can drive that road and do what you want to do, or you can get on interstate, but these two paths go. So I didn't know that. We were in a rental car, Draper and I. And you have to also understand Draper and I's personalities are a little different. but very close, right? So we were coming away. We were going to go to the hotel, and we wanted to, like, it's been a long flight, long trip, settle in and then, get changed. We were going to go downtown. We'd never been. It's our first trip to San Marcos. First time third time in Texas for me. I had spent a lot of time in Texas. First time in that town, but I thought I was on the interstate, and come to find out it was not. It was actually on the access road. So I'm telling you, it's like 3:30, and then the part of town that nobody's in. So I'm driving, and I said, okay. And also people that know me know, like, I'm the slowest driver ever. I'm the most conservative driver. I'm not putting anybody in. I'm not in that big a hurry.
And you are the one that has to drive.
Yeah, yes, that's one of my many quirks for the Georgia Southern Radio Network. I am the driver. No one else is putting their hands on this wheel, but no one ever seemed to mind. They're like, we could turn this into a party bus and Ryan could just drive everywhere.
Radio.
Right, Tradio, because he's a weirdo and he gets sick anytime he's in the car if he's not driving because of loss of control or whatever disease. But so Chris and I are in the car, and I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to merge. There's the next exit's 1 mile this way, and there's nobody anywhere around me. So I go over 3 lanes pretty quick. There's a car or truck is about, I don't know, like 20 yards, like maybe 20 yards behind me, 30. I mean, not close.
Right.
And he just loses his mind. I mean, just goes nuts. He's honking on the wind, or honking the horn, screaming and yelling.
Which honking the horn is one of your favorite things.
So I am enraged because honking the horns sends me to this, to this weird place of anger. And I said, okay, well, it's go time now if this guy wants to get serious. So I go back across 3 lanes and I pull in to a parking lot. And again, everything on the side of town's empty. There's nobody anywhere near anybody. Even in this commercial strip we were in, we just pull into empty parking lot. So this guy comes in. So think of it like this. I pull into a spot, right? So Draper is in the passenger side. I'm in the driver's side. And this crazy dude pulls in his truck like this. Okay. So my window is up. Draper's is down. This guy's screaming. He has a dog in the truck. He looks bad. Like, life is really beating this guy up pretty good. Beat up truck. He's older. And he's just screaming and yelling. And I am, while I'm mad, one thing you can say is that when bullets start flying, typically I become very rational and I can be the mediator here. And I said, look, dude, if that bothered you, that me changing lanes, I have my blinker on. I don't know why you were upset about this, but if it bothered you, then I'm sorry. Like, I truly am. Like, I'm not out here trying to, like, fight 60-year-old guys in parking lots,
right,
on purpose. So, and what Draper and I later said was, I think that made him mad. Like, it made him even more mad because I'm just trying to be rational. Like, I'm kind of laughing about this. This is a bit absurd that we're screaming at each other in a parking lot. So he goes and turns. Now, later Draper says he thought he was getting a gun. I'm so naive and dumb. I don't know what he's doing. And he comes back with one of those big gulp cups, like those 64 ounces from one of the taco places, like Del Taco. It's full of sweet tea. And he literally chunks it into our window. It goes all over Draper. Of course, very little on me. And he speeds off. Right?
Right.
Well, now, no, all right, forget that. So I throw it and drive, and I pursue this guy a couple miles. I'm flying through traffic because he's way out in front, because it took us 30 seconds. Like, we were startled. We didn't know what had just happened. Draper's drenched. And I'm running red lights. I'm trying to catch this. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm so mad at this point. I'm not thinking rationally. And he finally, Draper the whole time. Now, remember, again, Draper is definitely the more intimidating of us two. Draper's 6'5", 6'6". He looks like he wants to punch somebody, at all times. And former closer, former pro baseball player. And he's pleading with me, dude, just pull over. This is not worth it. Like, I don't know what you think you're going to do with this guy, but this guy could have a gun. And that's when it realized, like, okay, he's serious. Like, this isn't, it's, I think, a pretty loose carry state in Texas. So yeah, I pull over and we kind of look at each other and like, what just happened? I mean, we just literally got assaulted with sweet tea. I think he thought I was messing with Texas. I wasn't messing with Texas. I was just trying to get over a couple lanes and get back on the interstate. Maybe it's 10, I can't remember, but otherwise, wonderful people. I hear you guys are on the outside of the press box now.
Yeah.
I don't think they would like that very well. Last time that happened, the school learned a very valuable lesson, putting me amongst the visiting fans. But
Draper's been amongst the visiting fans when you were in a press box.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I put him out in North Florida. The last time we were at North Florida, the last time he was at North Florida was the game I refused to do. And the only one of 2 games, I think, it was in the end, I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like these people, like this is, it just, and Draper got it, Draper thought it was a little ridiculous. It's like, come on, man, not that big a deal. And it's like, no, it's not a workable press area. Like this isn't set up to do what they're trying to do. And it's very frustrating. So old me just gets frustrated and goes out there and just makes a bunch of jokes that probably make everyone mad in the press box. New me is like, you know what? I just won't do it. I mean, Draper was great play-by-play guy. He learned very quickly that great training that he had.
Right.
In broadcast journalism really paid off. So, hey, if you want to do it, go for it. I mean, we got to put it on the air. I think you went with them that last game. Maybe
I
somebody
stayed back in the studio because we knew we were going to get cut off at 8:00.
That's right. Because you knew the phones drop at 8.
Right.
Because they could never fix that. And
right.
So he went down and did it himself. But the time before that, there's just not room for 2 people. So that's when I got bit by the hornet, if you remember.
I forgot about that.
Had a big whelp on my neck because there's a hornet's nest in there,
right.
Because no one did. It was a disaster. So, I sat in the booth, in this tiny little booth that you couldn't barely even get one person in. And then I ran a headset out to Draper, and Draper sat in the last row of the stands and did color, and then did, of course, play-by-play when I walked off in the woods for 3 innings.
All right, before we let you go, I'm just going to open it up. Your favorite stories of when you were here?
When we got back in the playoffs in football with Jeff, that had been 2010, I think, when we realized we were a seat short on the team plane, and I volunteered to ride the equipment truck with Roger Inman. That was fun. We went to, and then of course, what I didn't realize the first time was God, where'd we go? Was it William and Mary? Maybe it wasn't that far. What I didn't realize was that everybody's superstitious, which I am not. I'm famously not superstitious. I'll go stomp all over lines. I don't care. I don't believe in that stuff. So, but because they are, I couldn't get back on the team plane, so I had to ride to Delaware with Roger in an equipment truck.
Was William and Mary where they asked you to give your credentials back?
Yes. Wow, I'd forgotten about that because I work with those guys. I know a lot of those guys over there. Oh man, we gave them. That was bad, man. What a attitude. So yeah, William and Mary reached out to us the Friday before the game, and I don't think there was Vegas lines, but I think they were better seated. Although, like the second half, Georgia Southern's a completely different team with Brent Pry and Jeff and that staff. A couple things had happened. They had been quoted in the paper about, I remember, and of course I'll take anything and locker room it as if like I'm mad about it. But they said something to the effect of they'd be okay against the triple option because all these guys played against the wishbone. Just all these weird comments. It just didn't seem like they were. And then two things happened, if you'll remember. Number one, they reached out to us and said, hey, after the game on Saturday, if you can leave your credentials in the press box, we're going to use them next week, which obviously if you lose, you don't need credentials. Your season's over. It's the playoffs.
Right.
So we made sure everyone heard about that. And I had a chip on my shoulder. And then number two, I think they knew we were pretty upset and they wanted to like jam us a little bit. So we get to the press box and they had labeled it Georgia State Radio.
Oh,
which,
I know that.
No, sir. And then like we literally just wipe them off the field in the first quarter. I mean, they were so unprepared for that offense. And really we were rolling outside of North Dakota State. Nobody was going to stop that team that year. And like we went and like it was so immature, so stupid. I mean, it was just so dumb. Like we went and like, scratched out Georgia State and like corrected it and like scratched out William and Mary and put, VMI or I don't know, whatever stupid thing we did. But Yeah. Yeah. I think that was, so, those were good stories. All the, like just every day, like it was just so much fun. Like I loved my time at San Francisco and at UVA. It's cool. Like UVA is cool, like to be in an ACC school and to like just Sunday, like Tony Elliott's going to be great. The head football coach, like he had worked the last event I did with Chris and our foundation, and he comes over and talks, and that's cool. Like when you get to a level where you've earned respect from people in college athletics, and and they acknowledge that, but it'll never be that way again. Like you just can't have that level of friendship and like be on the inside of something that you knew was growing, and Southern had this trajectory that we were going to be a part of if we could help get the revenue and get it off the ground. Yeah, going to work, I never didn't want to go to work. Like I don't think, and I don't think I ever didn't go to work that I could remember, and that probably cost me a marriage, but it gave me some memories, and you can't put a price tag on that, even the Commonwealth of Virginia.
I'd say it a lot that you and Draper and Chris and Terry and Russ, Frank, now Danny, you guys are responsible for what I've been able to do, and a lot of responsible of what I am today. But one of the first memories of that, at least on the on-air side of it, was the first game I ever called when we were at Kentucky for women's basketball. You and Blair and Draper were sitting in the office listening to it.
What, like an 11 o'clock tip or something? Yeah, really
11 a.m. Kids game. We lost 103-38. It was awful. But I will never forget the three of you listening. And for some reason, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no shot of a clue.
You said Kentucky University.
I said Kentucky University, and my phone starts going off like somebody just died.
You idiot. What are you doing?
Yeah.
You're fired. We used to fire you all the time, and you kept showing up. Like, Colin, you're fired. Leave. Do not come back here again. I'm like, what is he doing here? I thought we got rid of him.
I got fired like 10 times a day. Especially baseball. When we started playing like real or fake, I got fired all the time.
Oh man, real or fake. The secret text line that only former players had, some of the secret words that we would drop. Everyone knew when it was blowout time, man. I started getting blown up with the alumni texting that wanted to hear stupid words on the air. Oh man, no, those are great. And I tell you too, like what I think always was helpful for you was that all of us had like such different personalities and certainly different styles, none of us took that job. I can speak for all of us. Nobody took those jobs thinking we had to leave those jobs. Yeah. I knew likely I wasn't going much further in radio. I could do something else. Chris, it was very obvious, was one of the best in the country. So probably likely wasn't going to be there forever with some of the offers and how all that works. But, he's so good and professional and man, buttoned up and can't rattle him. And he's so prepared and such a broadcast. I mean, he has that intelligence because his dad was in the business and owned some stations, but a good thing because he wasn't handed a silver spoon. It's not like, he got anything other than, knowledge and learning the radio, world and understanding it from the back end of it, which is where his real value is. I mean, he's got a great voice. It calls a great game. That dude knows everything about everything that happens. Whereas a lot of guys just show up. He taught me all that. I taught you, we taught you that, and then of course I just try not to say cuss words and just be a stupid homer and try to make people laugh because that was my style. Steve Holman, like that's who I listened to, and Skip Carey, and like, so what? I'm Marino sitting beside me and I start blasting him on the air. I felt like someone needed to say it. Like, this officiating's terrible and he's not going to do anything about it. And then the phone call. Chris used to get a lot of phone calls on Monday morning, and I always loved him for that because he spared me probably a couple firings early on and protected me and made promises that I would behave.
Was one of those when you almost fought the Georgia mascot?
No, I think everyone understood that. Like that was actually no. Chris was there for that, so that was
right.
That's the only game outside of a few baseball games that he and I did together. It's the only time Chris Blair, and I'll never forget, Chris Blair did color for me. I did play-by-play women's basketball. It was a Sunday afternoon. He was on the color side. We had that's when Coach was doing color in the early years with him, with Chris.
Coach Kearns, yeah.
Coach Kearns. And when his health started, he didn't travel as much. I remember a game before we had anybody to back up. And I was doing play-by-play. Chris said, "Hey, can you do some color this year on the men's side?" This was like maybe 08 or 09 or something, very early. And I went to Jacksonville. We played Florida State Jacksonville at a neutral site. I did color there. And then we went to Athens Saturday night, stayed. And then the women played Georgia. And Georgia was like really good that year, preseason, like top 5 or something. And Spike, so I mean, it's no secret. I went to UG. I graduated from Georgia. So I'm familiar with it. I'm familiar with Stegman. And so Spike is their plush mascot that like turns its body or her body around inside and like jumps on its head and does all that stuff. Spike kept coming up press row. It's a tight press row on the other side, or at least was then, and was like hitting me in the back of the head. Just, I'm sure being funny, or she or he thought it was funny. I don't remember what I said. We were coming back from commercial break. What did I say? I said something in regards of,
if he hits me in the head one more time, I'm going to punch him right square in the nose or something.
If this mascot touches me one more time, I'm going to punch you right square in the nose. And the mascot was looking back at me. And then I realized what I had just said. And I followed that with, "This is becoming a real scene here, huh?" And I looked at Chris. And Chris took his headphone off and he couldn't breathe. He was laughing so hard. So we were going to the line for free throws, and I was trying to get the train back on. So I went back to normal play-by-play, but you could hear Chris like fumbling with the microphone because he was laughing so hard, and he couldn't stop because I think he was in shock at what I just said. And the mascot because they make these mascots, they look so joyous. And this mascot's got this like smile on his face and just staring at me. And some poor kid who's trying to be funny thinks, "I'm going to stand up and I'm going to punch you in the nose if you do this again because you're bothering me. I don't like people in my space." So, and Chris is as professional as it gets. So for him to go off the rails like that, that was always the thing with Draper and I, our standing rule, my role, I was trying to tell the score, but also try to make him laugh so hard that he couldn't breathe. And there were a couple times it happened. But yeah, different personalities. And I think it made it all work.
Really appreciate you taking some time. Really enjoyed the time that we had and got to catch up in Boone this year when you made it down for Georgia Southern App State football. Looking forward to catching up again, but appreciate you taking some time with us today.
Dude, I love you. I love you. I love all you guys. I love the fact that we have 9 versions of a text thread that we talk on every day. And some of that.
Have we found him yet?
I don't think so. No. No. We had an update on Wednesday. Sources close, have some ideas, but not that I know of, but we're going to continue. The truth's out there, man.
Appreciate the time. Love you, buddy.
Love you, dude.